I want to start out with just a little bit about myself. How many of you guys have heard about Buffer so far? Quick raise of hands. That's awesome. I do marketing at Buffer. So normally when not so many hands go up, I say I'm just doing something else. But it's like, yeah, that's, and so that's awesome. And we've been going for around 2 years. We have around 500,000 users now, make about $1 million a year in revenue. And I just wanted to share, 3 key lessons that we've learned. And I want to do it for 15 minutes and then have you guys, ask some questions. So it's kind of hard to fit everything in, so I want to try and be super, super specific. And the first thing that's kind of laid the foundation of how we approach things at Buffer, and that's really core to our DNA, is how we launched, how we got started. And the key lesson right up front is to validate first and code later. And the story goes like this. And my co-founder, Joel, who originally started Buffer by himself, we were back in the UK. Joel was in his bedroom in Birmingham on a rainy Saturday night, probably. and he came up with this idea for Buffer. He said, hey, I want to build something to help people post better to Twitter, right? And he was a developer, and he went to his computer and he sat down and he started to write code, because that's what developers do when they have an idea. They write code and put it out there. And he had just about failed with his previous startup, or was not happy with the success of his previous startup. And so a couple minutes into coding, he realized, hey, this is not really, I'm going to just go down the same route before, I'm going to build something no one wants, right? So he stops himself whilst he's coding and says, how can I validate all this idea that I have right now and go to users and see whether they would actually use that? And that's exactly what he did, and that's exactly how Buffer got started. So he moved away from developing for the next 3 weeks and started just validating, without coding, without any development time. The way he did it is he put out a landing page, which made it look like Buffer already existed. It's just like you go to any app you want to sign up, it looks like you want to just click the sign up button. That's what he did, just built this landing page, designed it, and then shared it. Put it out there on Twitter, put it out there on Facebook, asked a couple of friends to share it, and got some traffic to that page. And people started to click on it, right? It's like, oh, okay, I want to sign up. And then he showed them a message and said, like, oh, whoops, caught us a bit early, we're not quite ready yet. And the reason I think this was amazing was because he for the first time could know whether people would have actually signed up would the product exist. That was 1 week after he had the idea. So nothing existed, just the idea in his head, and he put it out there. And that was amazing, and I said, like, hey, no, and I know people would sign up for this, right? But what's the ultimate goal when you want to validate the business idea is, will you make money off of it, right? So he went ahead and put another interstitial page in there and said, okay, instead of signing up, I'm going to make you choose a paid plan without it existing. So people would hit the page, and they would have to pick. Do you want to get the free plan? Do you want to get a paid option? Or do you want to get the enterprise, even higher paid option? And the interesting part was that he got a lot of people, or enough people. In this case, around 150 people gave him his email, and around a quarter of those clicked one of the paid plans and gave his email in there. And that way, without knowing, within 2 weeks, he knew people would pay for this. And that made it super, super easy for him to sit down and say, okay, of course, then I'm going to go and build this first version, right? And so he built this first version, put it live, and as he had validated, after the first 3 days, the first person started paying. And that was kind of how Buffer got started. And I wanted to really, hopefully, share something with you guys where taking this validation concept from the lean startup, and you've probably heard this before a lot, and it's actually getting, I think, overused also a lot as well. But actually doing it, actually sitting down when you have an idea, and how many of you guys are engineers? Can I have just a quick show of hands? Oh, quite a few. Oh, quite a few are not. So, and the reason I love this kind of start from Joel was because it doesn't matter whether you can code or whether you can't code, right? Actually, it's even better that you can't code, because you can validate an idea before you have even put anything out there. And I think that's brilliant, Because I think that helps anyone who is saying, oh, I need to look for a technical co-founder and I've got this idea, or I need to, I'm just a designer, I need to wait for someone to code this, right? You can do all of that, right? You can collect the emails, you can do the custom development, all these buzzwords that floating around all the time in the startup world right now. You can do all of that, and you can do it with hands-on great examples. So that's the first lesson. If you can read up more on that, just search Buffer 7 weeks. There's a very long blog post about how Joel did that. The second lesson that kind of, after we launched, so we had a couple paying users, a couple hundred free users, nothing, so we were still nowhere, right? Is about how we did marketing and how we go about things in the marketing perspective. And the key kind of idea that became clear to me over time was the idea of working with percentages. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means to me as a marketing person and to me as a BD person before and after I learned some of these things. So we had Buffer going. We had first validation that people want to use this. We had the first validation that people want to pay for this. And so we thought, okay, what's next? Okay, we'll do marketing, right? And I think Guillaume made some great points about the different ways of content marketing, and we did a lot of these things as well. And I always love to talk about how we did it. So we did, in the first 9 months of launching Buffer, we wrote 350 guest posts. We plastered the web with different content, and that's what got us the first 50,000 users. And I normally try to explain how I went about this, right, and how I did this. And there's always a lot of questions, and I'm thinking to myself, how can I try and make this kind of abstract, the key lesson that people need to understand when they want to do that. On top of this, we got, in the first 9 months, about 50 write-ups from the top tech blogs, like Mashable, TechCrunch, all those. Like every 3 weeks we'll be in the press. On the next web, every 3 weeks we'll just be like constantly pushing out something new and trying to get press for it. And I try to explain to people how we did that and what the key underlying lesson is from how we learned that. And I've come to the conclusion that the one lesson that's the key is to work with percentages. And what that means is that when you start out doing something, you work on an idea, you send an email, you write a blog post, you have an expectation to whatever you do. And the expectation is that it will succeed, right? And even if you can have low expectations, you can have high expectations. And the problem I always had before I did this is I would do something and then it wouldn't work, and then I would be disappointed. And I think the key problem with that is, for me, I got frustrated and I would stop doing that. And when I started with the guest blogging, I had the same problem. I wrote my first ever blog post. I've never blogged before. Of course, it was crap, right? And why wouldn't it be? It's the first time I put something out there. And then I realized, okay, how can I approach this differently so I don't feel like I did before? And I realized, okay, I'm going to work with percentages. I will write 10 posts and expect 1 to be good. And I'll do that same with the press. I'll pitch 10 different writers and expect 1 response. And I will approach 10 different partners for BD deals and expect 1 to go through. And that's, for a lot of people, probably that's a very basic lesson. But putting this into your head and actually starting to work with those numbers, with whatever you do, stopping yourself from the frustration and saying, hey, I'm really going to work with the percentage again here, that solves you so much pain and so much hassle. And that's what got us to where we are today, I think, in many ways. And to give an example is that, for every article that you see written about Buffer, we had a launch today. We got, I think, five great write-ups from 5 great tech publications. And for every write-up you see, just think for yourself that there is 10 other emails that were sent, which were left unanswered and which got no response. And that's completely fine. That's just a percentage I work with, right? You have your spreadsheet, you have this expectation, this 90% will fall through and 10% will succeed. And that's the same thing I did with guest posting. I would, in the evening, email 20 bloggers and ask if I can get a guest blog. And I knew in the morning I would have 3 to 4 responses for saying, yes, send me a guest blog. And that was great for me, right? I wouldn't worry about the other 16. I wouldn't follow up. I would just find new ones and work with my percentage point. So first of all, try to find your percentage point. What is it? How many do you need to send to get the great response, right? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20? And then how does this model work for you? How does this, how does it economically work out for you for whatever you do? So that's kind of the second lesson I wanted to share. That's we've seen come up over and over again, right? From whether we moved from the guest blogging, content marketing, to the getting press, to the BD deals, to the working with publishers, and that's kind of what got us over the initial hump. People we would send the first email, no response. We try to do the second email, second deal, no response. We try and do the third one, and by that time people get where they get ooh, this is not working, and then we'll just wait. What is our percentage number in this case? So yeah, just hope whatever you do, whether it's with the validation from the first lesson, try and work with percentages. Find your percentage point. I remember clearly from guest posting, it was 40% at the start. And then we went to bigger blogs, and it dropped to 20%. And if I hadn't internalized that now it's 20%, I would have probably been disappointed because I would have gotten less responses because I realized, no, it's just lower now. That's fine. I just need to expect 2 responses on the 10 emails I send. That's the second lesson. The third lesson, and also something that I hope is very, very useful, is about pricing. Pricing your product. Something a lot of people wonder, a lot of people I think about, have thought about, and a lot of people have worries about, right? People get up and say like, hey, how much should I charge for this, right? Or I'm already charging this much for it, right? Is this the right pricing point? And we had the exact same problem. We said, how are we going to do that? We started out with Buffer. We charged the free plan, was free, and then we had the first paid version, which was $5 a month, and another paid version, which was $20 a month. And we didn't know whether it was right? And over the past 2 years, we've changed our pricing plans over 10 times. And I think that is the key lesson from pricing. Right? Pricing, you don't have to get it right. You don't have to figure out what is the right pricing point. You just need to do experiments. You just need to change it. You just need to do it. And then people come to me like, but what about the other users? And we have just had it $5, now it's $10. What are the people going to say? And there's two answers I always give people. The first one is, not everyone hits refresh on your pricing page every day trying to see whether you've changed your pricing overnight, right? And the second lesson is, always be great to existing paying customers. If you charge $5 yesterday and $10 today, existing users keep paying $5. If you charge $10 yesterday, $5 today, the existing users will change to the lower price point. And with that, you can do whatever you want. Because existing users, you will always treat well, and new users don't know what your pricing point is, right? So you just change it, right? Arbitrarily, from one day to the next. Charge $10, next day, change it to $20. Just see what happens. And I think that's a key lesson that might sound kind of ridiculous, but that's the key thing we did. And I know a lot of big startups. So one of our investors is Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot. And I know these guys are doing, I think, 50 million in revenue a year. And I ask him, what do you think about pricing? He's like, we just change it all the time. We just change it every few weeks. Just try something else, make it more expensive, make it less. And no one is tracking that. No one is having like, hey, but yesterday you were cheaper. And what's happening? Like, this is not like a grocery store where you're buying a can of Coke that's the same price every day, and you notice it goes up by 2 cents. So I want to take you guys' mind off the pricing worry, right? If you ever worry about pricing again, don't. Just put something out there. Try the pricing X, change it the next day. See what happens, right? And be good to existing users. And if there's any other people that might be annoyed and say like, oh, some people say, and it's like, oh, is that? And it's just like, well, we just we changed it, and the rate will be so low that you can just absolutely neglect that. So yeah, those are my 3 lessons. The first one is validate first, code later. The second one is find a percentage point whenever you work in marketing or BD, and work with that percentage point. So you will get rid of all the frustration that you ever had when you don't get a response to an email, when you feel you don't get press, when you feel you have something fall through as a deal. The last one is pricing is experiment. Change your pricing all the time. Try what works. See which price point is right. Don't try to analyze and say scientifically, oh, this will be psychologically, I read this in Dan Ariely's book that if you do The Economist and the $20 before and after, then you get more. I don't know if that works for you. Just try it out, and no one will, be bitter if you change anything. Thanks so much, guys. I think we've got time for a couple of questions.
Hi. Was wondering, when you're determining your percentage points, like, how do you know when you're sort of finding the range of percentages versus when you're just doing a crappy job? Like, if you're sending out an email and it's an ineffective email versus, oh, it's within my range.
Okay. It's a great point. I want to tell another story about that. So does anyone know the startup Jive? It's not a startup, it's a huge company, like I think multi-billion-dollar company. I remember they acquired a company, and a friend of mine is very close to the founder, and she told me about his system of sending emails. And he sold his company to 30 million to Jive. And he said, I'm the biggest leech in the startup world. I send emails, cold emails. He says, I have my 6 steps, or my 6 levels of email harassment. And it's incredible, and this is for real. And so what he did is he would send cold emails, the first email, then after, he would have a schedule. After 5 days, he would send the second email. After 2 days, the third email. The first one would be like, hey, I want to show my product. I think it will be great for your company. The second one is, hey, I just wanted to follow up on this. I want to show you, talk to you about my company. The third one was like from his personal Gmail. Said like, hey, I think my email landed in your spam folder. I just wanted to talk to you about this. The fourth email was like, hey, I know you're super, super busy, but I think this will be really powerful for your company. The fifth email, so he just had no ego. And he said that is the key to a successful startup founder. Eliminate your ego, be a leech, and follow up with the email over and over. So he said, and to give you a percentage point, he said with the first email that he would send, he had a 5% response rate. By the 6th email, after the 6 levels of harassment, he would have a 30% response rate. And that's first of all pretty crazy, and second of all, it clearly worked for him. He got hundreds of big clients that way. But the lesson there really is there is no such thing as a crappy job, right? If you get results, right? If you need to send 100 emails and get 1 press write-up on, I don't know, whichever site you want to be written up on, and it works, and you're happy with that, then that's fine. The only thing that exists, I think, is if it doesn't economically work for you, right? So if you say, I need to send 20 emails to get 1 thing, but that doesn't, cover my business, or that doesn't scale me in the way I want to, that's the time to stop. I don't think crappy job is the answer why you just stop doing something. But overall, personally, to give you some actual numbers, I think it's normally between 10% and 40% range that personally I found. For example, my BD deals, they're on the lower end. It takes me a lot more tries. My guest blogging, on the higher end, takes me less tries. And that's also changed over time because, I've gotten better. At the start, your numbers will be crappier, and then, over time. But just find a number, right? Get X on X. That's my result.
You mentioned a really creative story about how your founder was able to get data regarding what customers would pay for. And I'm wondering where the line is between being creative and getting information from your customers and then fooling your customers and disrespecting them.
Very, very good point. Again, have no ego. No, but a great question. I can totally see where you're coming from. I think there is a line. There's a line for sure. And at the stage Joel was that he was not that well known. It was not like he would blast an email to 100,000 people and they would all go to the webpage and try to sign up and be like, oops, we're not ready. It was much more of like, he would send a couple of tweets, get like a few hundreds, a few thousand hits. He tried to validate his product. He didn't try to market his product. And I think that's the key differentiation I would make. Try to validate, right? If you validate, you have a certain number in mind, right? You don't need hundreds of thousands, you want to have hundreds or dozens of people that will validate it for you. So you buy a couple of, $100 worth of AdWords to get the traffic you need and to get the 10, 20, people who click through, right? Or you'd send one tweet and you get the people you click through. I think if you constantly think about validation instead of marketing, you will always be on the right side. But that's a great question. Awesome. That's it? Okay. Thank you so much, guys. I'll be around. Let me know if I can help you with anything else.